Hello, everyone, and welcome to Adobe Live. We'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we meet and stream from today, and would like to also pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. My name is Flynn, and I'm here with the fantastic Karen Alsop. Hi, Karen. How are you doing?
Hi, Finn. Very good. Good to be back. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you back on. We had a great stream. I think it might have been a couple of months ago now. It seems like yesterday that we were hanging out. But that was lots and lots of fun. You got some great stuff set up for us. I'm very excited for today's stream. Very, very cool. But welcome everybody that is in chat. If you're watching the live, hi. Feel free to ask questions as we're rolling along. You can use the Behance chat if you're on Behance. If you're on YouTube, we'll check it out too. So if you have any questions or comments or things like that, as we're rolling along, please don't hesitate to throw it in or even just say hello. Let us know where you're tuning in from. We're here for an hour today. This is part one of a two-part stream. So we're here for an hour today, and we're back in 2 days with part two. So even if there's something we don't cover today, throw your question in chat, and then maybe we can get to it on Thursday as well. So for those who aren't as familiar with your work as I am, Karen, what's kind of the elevator pitch? You're an international award-winning artist from Melbourne. I know you through your photography and photo compositing, but can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I call myself a photographic artist. And usually when I explain to people what it is that I do, it's really not comprehensible until they see the work.
Right.
I often try and explain that I take a whole lot of photos and I blend them together in Photoshop to create a story. But until people actually see what I do, it doesn't make sense. So that being said, I'm actually going to move over to my screen and show you some examples. So I've got just a few. These ones are actually up at Puffing Billy at the moment. There's an exhibition, and we talked about this last time. The exhibition has been going fantastically. There's such a good response. And I've got these pieces up really big, 1.8 meters wide, these ones here, the animal puns ones. They're massive, and so tourists and everyone are coming in getting to see this work. And this series here, something that I love to do is always tell a story, as I said, and this series is all about animal puns and hiding puns in the piece visually. So things like bull in a china shop and cash cow, holy cow. There's many puns that people can find in these, so they're lots and lots of fun. This one's sick as a dog, raining cats and dogs, can't teach an old dog new tricks, and many more. This one I did for Adobe Max when I was presenting. I talked about this one on there. And this one is piggy bank, and there's a lot of puns in there. Male chauvinist pig, lipstick on a pig, pigs might fly, and so forth. So I'll just scroll through these images quite quickly. This is the Homeless Wildlife series. So that's all about wildlife and how the challenges that they face, like the penguins face challenges trying to get food for their young, and so I made it more anthropomorphic, so making it so that the animals are in more of a human-like situation. And then this series, there's 8 of them in the series now, and I created one of them in the live that we did last time, the echidna.
The echidna, yeah.
Yeah, so, and that had such an awesome response. People are absolutely loving the echidna. But yeah, this whole series was done in conjunction with Puffing Billy, and they have this on merchandise and T-shirts and puzzles and everything, as well as on exhibition there. So this is a series that's a little bit fun, just putting these Aussie animals into these scenarios where they're connecting with Puffing Billy and they're connecting with the local environment. So the last one there, that's the one that we created in the live, and I can't believe that I worked on this live without having really started it. I put myself right in the deep end there, but hey, it worked out in the end, and yeah, pretty happy with the result.
It was great. I really like that kind of stream because it is very raw. Like it's actually doing it kind of as we're live, and you know, having the going back and forth and trying to find the right photo and, you know, what's working and what's not and things like that. So it was a good representation of the actual kind of digital creative process.
That's right. Now, today I wanted to show a little bit more of the practical photography side of what I do. And one of the things that I tend to have to do a lot of is focus stacking. So I'm actually going to go into that, the why, the how we would do it. And I'm going to show a little bit of a behind the scenes video of one of my pieces called Snail Power. I'll click onto the full screen image here. So this piece here, just a bit of fun, really. I wanted to create something that showed these snails getting filled up with petrol or fuel and then going really, really fast. I had so much fun creating this, but the challenge was that these snails, they're real snails from the garden, and I had to make them look like they were large snails. And you can't do that by taking one photo of something that's miniature, because what happens in the shot is that parts of that animal or that piece will blur out because there's not enough depth of field. So I had to focus stack these snails, and they were moving when I was photographing them too. So I had to kind of work a bit more manually than I would with something that's still like what we're doing today. But yeah, it worked out. It worked out in the end. So
that's really cool, and I'm sure we're going to see what focus stacking is. It's a term that I hadn't heard before today, so I'm super interested. I think I can kind of piece together, I think, what it might be. But that's really cool. I love learning new techniques. I love sharing those new techniques with the wider audience as well. So very interested in that.
Yeah, absolutely. The focus stacking is something that I often talk about when I I'm running my masterclass as well, because it's one of those things that people just don't think about, because you're bringing in all different elements that are different sizes, really big things, really small things. And the only way to make that work is that, yeah, they're all in focus. So I'll share the video of Snail Power so people can see how it all came together. It only goes for about a minute. Might talk through it a little, and then we'll get into the practical part of focus stacking. So
sounds great. Go for it.
Right. So yeah, so this is just the start. You can see I'm bringing in the elements. I photographed a petrol station that actually isn't running anymore locally. There's a building there from a place called Yellingbo that some people might recognise, and that building behind that you see on one side is from Vegas. So all of the different pieces come from many different places, and I store them together in my Lightroom catalog so that I can get back to them, finish off with that later too. But you can see that I'm bringing in the snail and then, you know, putting everything together so it looks like it's being filled up. At times in this speed edit, you see me using stand-in snails. So I use snails from Pixel Squid, which are 3D snails, just to get placement, like so I can figure out how I'm going to photograph them. And then, yeah, end result. So it's obviously I didn't work that fast.
Yeah, that would be next level. I love this snail being filled up. There's something really cute about the snail. Kind of imagine a little snail like fuel cap going on top of that, and then just shooting off. It's very cool.
Off it goes, yeah. So I'll go back to the chair, and yeah, so that was a bit of fun. But do you want to see some of the photos that I actually used for this? This is a little bit crazy.
Sounds great.
This cam. So you can see these snails in my studio. I've borrowed them from the garden. I put them back afterwards. And when I put them in, I just really expected them to kind of just hang around and not move fast. But they went so fast. So I was trying to focus stack them the way that I'm going to show you guys shortly. But what I ended up having to do was take photos where the focus is at different points. So taking a photo where the focus is at that closest point to me, and then taking a photo where there's focus a bit further back and then a bit further back, because you can see that that back antenna is not in focus, whereas in that final image, everything is in focus. So I literally had to merge. So for focus, this isn't traditional focus stacking where I guess Photoshop does all the work for you. It was more of a manual process of pulling out what's in focus, what's not. Let's blend it all together and mask it so that it is all in focus. So that is one way that I would approach it quite often. if I'm photographing something that's moving. Nice slimy snails. So yeah, so
They're so slimy.
they're very. I add some water.
Right.
I added. I can't even remember. There were things I found out about snails, like you shouldn't put salt there because that can make them die. I think, I don't know. So I learned a lot about snails doing this, but these are all my behind the scenes pieces that went into it. So just lots and lots of different elements that, you know, even to the atmosphere and things like that, so that I could be left with this finished piece. So Lightroom Creative Cloud is such a good resource because you can find things really, really easily. So I'm going to jump into that after that we've done the focus stacking. But cool. Today we're going to do some focus stacking. Now this is my...
Just before we jump into that, your camera is flipped, and that might be my fault or that might be on your side. But I think if we're going to jump through, it will be good to see if we... Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Look at that.
That's so much better. People don't have to read backwards. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so I'll flip over to this scene here. So what you can see, this is through my camera. Now I've currently got the Z6 set up to do the focus stacking. I do have a Z9, but just due to it being, so a Nikon Z9, due to that being a newer camera, I wasn't able to get this system all kind of playing nicely together yet. I'm sure that will come. So we've got the Nikon Z6 set up, and I am going to move over to, lots of buttons going on here. I'm going to move over to the camera, and you can see me over here.
Yep, we can see you.
You see me in the little box there.
Yep.
And what I need to do here is I've positioned these little Sylvanian families in different spots. So some of them closer to me and to the last one that's right at the back. Now, when you focus stack, you can do it in camera with the Nikons. There's a way that you can kind of fire off a bunch of photos, so it takes photos from the front point right to the back point. But I'm just going to do this manually because some of you might not have a camera that does that, and just so that you know the principle of how this works. When you're doing macro work, so a lot of people that do macro work, they actually take many, many photos and blend them together. I'm literally just going to take 4 right now. It's probably not quite enough because there'll be some points in between the Sylvanian families that might be a little soft on the grass. But you can imagine if I took lots of photos, how the blend would happen. So I'm going to focus on this front one here and just take a photo. And then I'm going to focus on the little bunny sitting in the couch there and take another one. And then I'm going to focus on the owl. Just make sure that's in focus. And then I'm going to focus on that bunny right at the back and on the background itself. So now we have all of those photos that should have come through to Lightroom. So we'll jump back over here.
Nice. Love this multiple camera setup. And as I said before the stream, this is great because I don't have to kind of really do anything. I can kind of hang out. You've got it all covered on your side. It's amazing.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm going to demand this of every guest now for Adobe Live. You just handle everything on your side.
As long as it all works, I'm happy. I've got this little device here that I'm switching as well. I'm using that to switch cameras. So I'm going to switch over to, no, see, I clicked the wrong one and I need to click this one. This is the one I want.
Yep.
So I'm in Lightroom. So I tethered to Lightroom to that Z6, as you could see. So those photos came straight through. And that's another thing that's really handy in studio. If you haven't tried tethering or even out on location, to be able to just send the photos directly to Lightroom is awesome. You can even turn on live and see what the camera sees in live.
Oh, you can see what, like the digital viewfinder, you can see all that.
You can see all that, absolutely, yeah. And you can control it, like I can take a photo from here. If I want to do it not where the camera is, so that's really helpful too. But yeah, because I was changing the focus, you've got 4 shots that I took there. I'll bring them up a little bit bigger.
Very good. Just before we get into this part, we have a question from YouTube from Najith. Do you usually come up with the theme or story before the shoot or after?
Usually, good question. Usually before. I'd say 90%, 95% of the time. It's all about planning for me. I know people work differently, and some people like to just play, but I really, really like to plan and sketch. I'm really bad at sketching, but I do use Fresco to sort of sketch out my ideas and write things down. So that's just on the iPad. But to be able to work out exactly where I'm going with an image like the ones that you saw, there's no way I could kind of pull that together randomly, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So back over.
Sorry, you go. I was just going to say, I would imagine from the sort of shots that you would need to get, you've got to pack everything up. You've got to go out to location. The light perhaps would be a consideration. How long you have there, if there are animals or people and things like that. You would have to be very well planned, or you could be very inefficient with your time.
Really true. Yeah.
Yeah.
The image that I'm going to take you guys through next session, actually, I'll go into a bit of that because there was definitely that need for planning to the point where the dog, this is really sad, but I had to photograph the dog and the dog only had a little bit of time before it needed to get put down. So I literally put the dog 4 days before it was put down, and I had to get exactly what I needed without even knowing what I needed. So it was a really interesting situation, but all came together and they were loving it at the end. So yeah.
Great.
All right, so focus stacked images. So we've got the four images there. So I think it's those ones, yes. So these were the first test ones that I took there. So I'm going to highlight these, and in Lightroom, what I could do first, and I'd recommend actually, is if there's any need to edit, you do that in Lightroom first, and so that when you bring it into Photoshop, because it does, I just loaded Lightroom on my computer. I've got a new Mac Studio. There you go.
I've got the tutorial walkthrough popping up for you to help you out. That's great.
So when you bring it into Lightroom, you're bringing it, into Photoshop, you're bringing it in as flat layered images. So you want to bring them in ready to go, ready to blend. Now this one is, I'm quite happy with that. I can do the cropping afterwards, so I won't actually crop here because in Photoshop we're going to align just in case I moved the camera a little bit, which I may have done because I was clicking on the button and that tripod's not very sturdy. So all I need to do is highlight all of those images and go to edit in, open as layers in Photoshop, and that will then process those images and bring them all into one file. So it's bringing them in, one on top of the other. This it's actually a really simple process. I've created an action that does all of this, but I'm going to take you through the manual way of doing it so you can do it. You could create your own actions there as well. So I do have the action available in the Story Art Education store if people want it to make it life easier. So there you've got all four. So the first thing that you need to do is align them, because as I said, they might not all be exactly aligned. Like if I change it to difference, you can see that's not exactly in the same spot. So using difference as a blending mode helps to see if something's not completely lined up, because you'll see little white edges. So they're not exactly lined up, they're pretty close. So I'll select them all.
That's a great tip, using the adjustment layer to kind of see if they are aligned or not. That's great.
Yeah, because often people might just use opacity and bring it down, but that's harder to see. Yeah, the difference blending mode really works well. Okay, so then with them all selected, you go to Edit and Auto Align Layers. So this is the first step. You just click on Auto, that'll do the job for you, press OK. So that'll bring everything together, but it won't blend it yet.
Okay, that's interesting. You could just see it slightly changed then. once the
Yeah,
process
just
finished.
a little millimeter probably. So then the next step is you want to blend the layers. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to Edit, Auto Blend Layers. You don't want to do a panorama. That's obviously if you're blending multiple images together and create a landscape, you want to stack the images. So you bring them all together, and what it's going to do is it's going to work out what's in focus and what's not in focus. So Photoshop is doing all of this for you. I leave these ticked on, and then we press OK, let it do its thing. And there we go. We've got everything in focus. Now, as I said, it's not perfect, so you can see some little blurry bits in between those focal planes there. So I would probably, in doing this properly, I would take maybe 8 photos instead of 4 and go in between, focus in between those sections just to get everything crisp. But ultimately, I just really wanted to show the process of it, because now that that's like that now looks, that could be something that's real life, as in that is a shop that is full size. Those are, they're obviously Slovenian families, but if they needed to be full size, human size, they would be, you would look at it like that instead of looking at them like they're miniatures, because they're blurry and the depth field is shallow. So yeah, that is the process of that. I would love to answer any questions if there's any questions about it.
Yeah, I think just on actions, there was a question just around understanding what actions are.
Why don't I show you?
Yeah.
So if I go back to just having brought these in, so open down to where they all are. Okay. If I want to create an action that does all this, all I need to do is make sure my actions panel is available, create a new action before I've done anything, and I'll call this focus stack. And what this is going to do is it's going to record my process. So because this, what I'm doing, I would do a lot of times over, it's great to be able to make an action. So then I go, okay, my next step is select now all of them, but this is not going to work because it's got a title to it. So when you create an action, if something has a title in it, it won't actually work the next time you use it because it's looking for that title. So I press
right.
So just in creating actions, what you need to do is make sure that everything is generic. Okay, so I've got this little weird thing that goes on. I've got the new Mac Studio, and when I'm live streaming and I try and close something, for some reason the alert goes behind Photoshop and I can't get to it.
Oh, right.
Anyone knows how, I don't know if it's a new Mac thing or what. Yeah, if anyone knows why.
Haven't had that one happen, but I don't have a new Mac, so.
It's always the way, you know, you think, oh, one thing's going to be painful. So yeah, so when you create the action, now I'm not going to go through this now because I can't remember off the top of my head what the shortcut is to select layers without it being assigned to the names. So I have to look that up for you guys, and maybe I'll post it in the comments afterwards. But I'll do it as though it's going to select all of them. I'm just trying my shortcuts here, but no. Okay, so I'll select all of them. I'll post in the comments what some instructions on that. And then the next thing that you would do is just you run through the whole process. So edit, auto align, and auto. So then that'll save in the action. And then you do the same thing with the blending. And once you've finished, you've got that action saved that you can just press play on at any time and it will do the whole thing. So
that's great. And for those, you know, the question came up and everything, like you can do this for so many things in Photoshop, pretty much everything. You can, you know, if it's a repetitive thing that you find that you do in your process that can be automated, then then yeah, it's something you can try out. Try to create an action, speed up your workflow quite a lot. I like to think about it like setting up a shortcut for something you just do all the time. It's one of those things that if you spend a little bit of time setting it all up, it kind of returns dividends like in the future and saves you so much time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the key, I think. And what I find is when I am doing something all the time, I figure other people must be doing that all the time. So I tend to then pop those actions into my education site to make it available for other people as well. You just don't want to be repeating yourself and going through those steps. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to jump out of this screen. If we've got no more questions about the focus stacking, I'm going to go over to
one question. There was one more just around. Do you utilize the sharpen tool anywhere in this process?
So not in the stacking part, and generally, look, there's so many ways to sharpen things. I don't do a lot of sharpening at the end of my process, although if I need to, I use the high pass filter. And next session is all about finishing something in Photoshop. So I might be able to touch on that next time. But at this point in time, my shot's sharp enough, and I'm not wanting to, I guess, destroy that. So I don't do any of that sharpening work until right at the end if I need to. Yeah.
Cool. Great.
All right. So yes, so not to confuse you guys, we were in Lightroom Classic before. That's what we were tethering to. So Lightroom Classic I would use to photograph, do a whole session and bring them in, edit them, or to tether and to be able to use the computer when I'm in studio taking lots of photos. But Lightroom Creative Cloud is where I store everything. So it's really important that when you're when you're a composite photographer, that you keep all of your images that you take in one place. When I was first creating and I was collecting images, I'd have them on this little hard drive and then I'd copy that and I'd move it around and then I'd have duplicates and it just became so hard. And I'd also try and keep them in different folders. So, this was actually how I had it sorted initially. And I'll zoom up on that so you can see. I think I can do this over here. There we go.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so there's like, okay, I went to the Auckland Zoo. Here are all my photos from the Auckland Zoo. Baby ducks. Baby ducks. Yeah.
Baby ducks.
I love it. I haven't even used those ducks yet. I just had them come into the studio. So I tried as well as I could to sort out my images, but I wasn't really that consistent with it. And so there are probably so many more baby ducks somewhere else in my collection that are not in this folder. So what I love about this storage system is that I can find anything that I've photographed probably over the last 7 or 8 years. I think I've been storing them in here, and I can just type in something and I'll find them. So if I want to look for baby ducks or ducks in general, and I put duck in the search, because it's all online, it's the AI system has referenced what a duck looks like, and it will find any photos that it thinks is a duck or a penguin.
I love the penguin sneaking in there, sneaky penguin.
Yeah. So it does a pretty decent job, but you're going to find some random things here and there. And so then once I've found the shot that I want, then I can grab that and take that into Photoshop. I do want to take everyone through a step that's really important in the process of non-destructive editing in your workflow. At the moment in Lightroom, if you just go edit in Photoshop, I'm going to show you what happens. It's a good process if you know you're wanting to bring the image back into Lightroom, but it is downloading this shot too, so hopefully it won't take too long. And I did want to mention, I want someone to tell me what to search for. So if you've got something random you want me to search for, please type it in the chat and then we'll see if something comes up.
That's great. Throw it in chat.
Yeah, anything. Who knows what's in my collection. So here's the duck. And what has happened here, that is not a smart object anymore. It's flat.
Right.
If I'd edited it and it was perfect and I knew I didn't want to do any more work to it, that would be okay. But when you're compositing and you're changing so many things, you want to have full control. Like this part of the fur here, I'd really love to sort of darken up. And it depends what I put this duck into. If the scene's got some light behind it or it's a dark scene, I'd want to be able to adjust once they're in the scene. And if it's a flat file, you are limited. You can still use levels, adjustments, and all those kinds of things, but you're limited because you don't have access to the raw. So I'm going to close that. That's not the way I would work.
So it comes in as a JPEG, is that right, instead of a RAW?
As a TIFF, I think.
As a TIFF, okay.
So it's still high quality. It's just that it's not the raw. You don't have the raw data anymore. So the way that you can do it is instead of edit in Photoshop, I do it this way: export, original plus settings. So if I do it that way, it's a two-step process because then it needs to go into a folder. But what I do is I keep all my folders together, and it helps when I'm needing to find all those images that I've used in my composite as well. So if I go new folder, I usually call it elements. Once I've done this the first time, as I'm finding more files, it'll immediately go to this folder, so I don't have to try to find it. And then I press export, and it exports out the raw file. I'm just going back into it. So it exports out the raw file when it loads, and the XMP file there as well, which is the information about the raw file, so the adjustments. So then when I bring this into Photoshop, the next step here, this is really important too, is your settings. So if I just zoom up here, down the bottom, this little line here, it's really important to set this the first time you use it. You want to be working in 16 bits. The default is 8 bits. So you change that to 16 bits so that you've got the full gamut there that you're working with. And the other button you want to click is down here, Photoshop, open in Photoshop as Smart Object. If you don't click that, it'll actually flatten it. So if you click that and leave that, and that once you've done that once, that's saved, this little button, Open Object, will then mean that you've got access to the raw. So you can then double click your Smart Object and you can do anything you want within Camera Raw at any point in time. So even after you've masked, after you've put this even within another Smart Object, as long as you don't flatten it through your process, you've always got access to your raw data. So that's just something that if you're compositing particularly, to work through so that you've got all of that information that you can play with.
That's great. And so once you've set that up, Photoshop will remember that, I assume, as well, so that each time you do it. Yeah, so just something to think about. Is the 8-bit compared to the 16-bit? What is that? Do we know what that is happening technically? Is it just more information?
Yeah, it's more information. One way that I can explain, like say you have a sky that has a soft gradient in it, and if you're working in 8-bit and you really push that file, what you'll notice is banding. So in the 8-bit, much more noticeable, that banding in that gradient. The 16-bit has just a lot more color depth to it, a lot more information, a lot more color information, and it shouldn't band. So you can push those files a whole lot more. Yeah, the payoff is it's like a bigger file, more operating power that you might need, but just, get yourself a Mac Studio or something.
Yeah. Well, that's really great. We did actually have 2 suggestions of things to look for. We got armadillo, and we also got wombat. And I think wombat, we're pretty high on the chances of having a wombat in the archives. But let's see if there's Let's see what happens if there's an armadillo.
Armadillo, even. Oh, I wouldn't spell that correctly too. Okay. Let's try. Well, let's try that first. AR. How is it spelled?
ARMA.
Yeah.
DILO, I think.
All right. Let's see.
Spelling on the live stream is dangerous.
Oh, black hole. No.
Black hole. Okay, no dillos. Let's go safe. Let's go for our safety, which is wombat.
Wombat. There we go.
There we go.
Those wombats. Many of them photographed in the studio there. Oh, there's a rabbit.
I love these cheeky animals that just kind of sneak in. Thinking echidna snuck in a little bit to the duck one or something, but it looked like it was quite focused on its snout or something. So maybe the AI or the search or something.
Yeah, it's getting better and better though, I must say. And when I first started doing these searches, there was a lot more randomness. It's pretty spot on now. So definitely, yeah, one rabbit in that lake. So done a good job. The ability to, I guess, also just grab a camera, any camera, and also like even use your phone and link it to Adobe, to the Lightroom in your phone is handy as well. I did show that in the last live, so maybe people can go back and check that out. But yeah, just having everything in one place is well worth that kind of sifting and everything. So are there any other questions on anything? I don't know which screen to jump to, so I might just jump back to me and then we can cover whatever we need to.
Let's do that. We defined actions and adjustment layers. No, I think we've covered all the questions so far. If anybody has any questions, please throw them in chat while we're here. Oh, there was one earlier on that I missed. Apologies. Would you rather shoot living or inanimate subjects?
I like to do both, obviously. You've got to shoot the inanimate, I can't even say that word, subjects to be able to put the living subjects in. But I must say, I'm really enjoying doing more with animals. I do humans, I photograph humans, but the animals just don't talk back. They don't have opinions. I can put hands and feet and different things in all different spots and they don't complain. So yeah, I'm really enjoying doing strange things with animals and being creative with them. Yeah,
that's great. And question from me, like, do you have any tips on shooting animals? And I'll start with a story. My first graphic design job was as a junior graphic designer for a packaging company, and we were, as juniors, allowed to kind of pitch, try to pitch for what we think whatever it was. But it was mostly FMCG, so fast moving consumer goods. And there was the Friskies. If you know the Friskies food, it's always got a ginger cat. My mum was a vet, and she actually had a ginger cat boarding. And I tried to take all these photos, and I knew nothing about photography or anything. I took like 400 photos. But they ended up using like the pose and everything like that. And then they got a real studio cat and got it in. But I found that so difficult because I couldn't get the cat to do anything I wanted to do, literally hurting cats. So anyway, that was a little personal project segue into how, and are there any tips in photographing animals in general?
Yeah, well, obviously some animals are easier than others. And I do have a client that contacted me that was saying how one of their cats, haven't photographed it yet, but one of their cats is just really super shy and would probably just run and hide if I came to photograph it. And I suggested I could actually set up the camera and I could tether and I can shoot from another room and then it wouldn't know I'm there. So
oh, there we go. I knew there'd be a tip. See, that's really interesting. That's a great approach.
It's something I did in lockdown too, because when we sort of had been locked down and then half opened up and there were all these rules around things, I actually did that with headshots. So I was in another room and I had the camera set up in here and people would come into the studio and I would photograph them from the other room and I'd talk to them on the screen. And
that's great.
Yeah, it worked well. Thankfully, though, I didn't have to do that for too long because I'd much rather be with someone than doing it remotely. But there's always ways around things. Photographing in the studio is helpful too. When I can't always do it, but when I can, it means I can control the light. So the way I've got my light set up is that there's 4 lights and it creates this really soft light all around. So it doesn't really matter what direction the animal goes. It can move around and it can walk around. And if I have the green screen out often for that, and it just makes it really easy to cut them out and really easy to relight. So once I put them into the composite, I can make areas darker and lighter. But if you photograph in a very bright situation, really midday sun, light coming down, shadows, that can be very, very hard to place into another image that's a different lighting scenario. So at all times, whenever you can, I suggest overcast soft light is always the best way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Good advice. We have one more question. Have you ever composed an image with fantasy creatures in it, or do you prefer to stick to the natural world? Yeah, I imagine that it would be tempting to create a dog cat at some point. But have you ever done that?
I've created a dragon. I'm trying to actually see if I can find it. I created a dragon out of multiple animals. I bet I can't find it. It's not there. It's one of my really old ones. But I used a lizard and a horse and a bull and everything.
Oh, wow.
That, and I merged them all together to create a dragon. So that's the really cool thing about what I do. I can do anything, and there's no limitations on what's possible. Yeah.
Oh, cool. We actually have one more question if we've got time for that.
Yeah.
What format do you recommend when you export photos for print, JPEG or TIFF?
Yeah. So when my print files, I export as a TIFF. I export that as a flat TIFF so that when I bring that into my printing software, so I use Mirage, I do a lot of printing in-house here, and I've got big 44-inch Epson, which is beautiful. But I print from the TIFF file because then you've got, there's no compression in it, and it's going to give me the best result. But so my files, my working files are large document format files, so Photoshop PSB files, because they're generally about 10, 15 gig size. So they definitely hit that limit of what TIFFs and Photoshop files can handle. But yeah, once I've finished, that new version is a flat version that's for print. But then JPEGs are really handy too. Like if you're sending files for print and you just have to send a JPEG, as long as it's a high-res JPEG, as long as it's not compressed, you're still probably going to get enough, the person printing it will probably get enough out of it. The main thing you got to be careful with JPEGs is saving, resaving, because every time you save over a JPEG, you lose data and it compresses it. So, yeah.
That's good. That's good advice. Well, yeah, we are out of questions.
Do we? I've got something else I can show. I was holding off, not sure how long we would be going for, but I can touch.
Got about 10 minutes left, so yeah, you can jump into that if you can do it. If you can do it in 10 minutes, or we can kind of pick up where we kind of leave off as well on Thursday, because we will be back on Thursday.
Yeah. Okay, no problem. What I might do, I'll touch on this. What I wanted to talk about in terms of also perspective and choosing the right perspective, because that's just another important thing with compositing when you're actually photographing and when you're choosing an image. So I will switch over to my screen. Yep. All right. Now, before I jump in, this is the piece I was talking about that we'll go into next session that I did for a client, and talking about finishing off and blending and making sure that the fur looks real and all those special things and considerations, and sharpening and atmosphere and things like that. So we'll get into that next time. But when you're photographing landscapes, so quite often I'll be out somewhere and I will want to capture something that I might end up putting someone in or something into later. So it's very, very different to landscape photography. Composite photography is thinking about what you'll do with after and how you'll change it. And one of the key things that you need to think about is perspective, because if I put someone in this one that is standing up straight and I position the camera at a certain height, can you see the difference there in the perspective? Yeah. So this is what I would call kid perspective. So I usually have a shot that's at kid perspective. It's me bobbing down and I'm photographing it more at like my waist height, and then getting that lower perspective. And then this is my standing height or my standing perspective. So it would be really important for me to know that after I've come back to put someone into this shot, to make sure that that height is correct. Because what happens is, if you don't, it looks like they're falling over or they're sort of leaning towards you or they're leaning back and it doesn't
right.
look. So I highly recommend doing at least, 2 different perspectives when you're shooting, just so that you've got both options, but also just thinking about, how might you use that image afterwards? Where might you place someone? Could you merge this with something else as well? What's the light doing? So in this one, if I want to use this and I was shooting for this piece, I would actually put the light on the left-hand side, make that a whole lot brighter, and dim the light on the right-hand side so that it mimics the light that was coming from, that early morning sunrise. So
yeah, that's interesting just on that photo as well, because the light source would potentially be behind the person as well due to that shadow on the left-hand side.
Yeah, exactly. And that shadow is such a good reference point as well, because it then helps us to know, well, if I place someone in this shot, this is what their shadow would look like. So when you're trying to add shadows, having another reference is really helpful. Like if you wanted to, you could even put someone in as a stand-in for the shot. If you had accessible someone that could stand there where you want to place the person, that means then you could focus on them on that point and you could assess what their shadow looks like. Then you take a shot without them in it. So that's something I do if I'm really planning a shot, making sure I've got those stand-ins. So yeah, perspective. So there's these key things that you need to look for when you are shooting stock. Perspective. Oh, look, there's spiders in there. These are all random shots that are in my, I don't know. I'll scroll down. Perspective, depth of field. So depth of field, working out if you want to blur out the background. So this one's a bit shallower. I did this for the echidna piece. I wanted to put the echidna in a set spot and the background's a little softer. But for the most part, if I'm just taking stock images, signs, whatever it is, I'm shooting on a really narrow aperture. So an aperture that's going to get everything in focus from this point, not right at the front. It might be a little bit soft from about here through to the back. If I know where I'm going to place someone, say here's my stand-in, then I can place a little teddy or something to create.
So you just walk around with like a teddy bear or something like that to pop in situ.
I do, and I have a mannequin. Actually, if I search mannequin, I have a mannequin. No, I spelled it wrong. Maybe if I put doesn't know what to search for. Anyway, I have this little mannequin that I use as a stand-in and I dress and do all sorts of things with it.
All right. Yeah, that would be even weirder. I think like out of context, like someone walking down the street with a mannequin and photographing it.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird. I do get strange looks when I'm out sometimes.
That's great. Well, we've got maybe one more question before we close out today. If anyone has a question while we're going through, we could probably fit one more in, so let us know. So the question is, would you also add in blurring and unfocus to mess with the depth of field? So I guess we're talking about before getting the shot, increasing the depth of field as much so it's a bit easier. But But yeah, also in the post process, which is probably something we're going to cover a little bit on Thursday, do you add in blur from something that's sharp to make it fit the scenery?
Yeah, I do at times, absolutely, and I do that in two steps. So if I know I need to add blur, there's some really cool features now in Photoshop that allow for depth maps and working out where the blur should be. So they're good to play with in the neural filters. But generally, if I have a simple scene, I'll use Gaussian blur and I'll add noise as well. Because if you just do the blur on its own, it's a bit too smooth. It doesn't really look realistic. So if you also add noise to that blur, then it tends to look a whole lot more real. Then you just need to work out where, you might need to mask in the blur so that if there's something upright like a tree, that whole tree should be the same. It shouldn't be blurred like it's flat. But we can go through that a little bit.
Right. That was great. It was really excellent because your camera focused in and out as you did that. So it was almost like totally intentional effect while we talked about depth of field and blurring. Well, that's great. So we will be back on Thursday. Well, it's Thursday here. It might be Wednesday where you are, depending on where you're tuning in around the world. And we'll get stuck into that. We'll be doing some editing. So what will we be using on Thursday? Will be mostly Photoshop, mostly Lightroom, or
mostly Photoshop, yeah. And it's really that ending point that I want to focus on in Photoshop, because often, we'll talk about cutting out, abstraction, and adding shadows, but it's that finishing off that I always get asked about, like how do you make it look like a painting? How do you make it blend so well? So it's those little tips, and there's it's not all of them. I don't think I can cover everything that I do in one session, but it's some key tips that will help to kind of bring everything together right at the end. Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic. I can't wait for it. Thank you so much, Karen. Between now and then, where can people find more about you? I think you mentioned some of the presets that you have as well, other places online. If you could let us know before we, finish up for today.
Yeah, so storyart.education is where I've got a whole lot of resources there and tutorials. I'm also running a masterclass that's starting mid-July. So that runs for 8 weeks. It's a real intensive kind of interactive class. So we get together weekly. So if you're wanting to go a whole lot deeper with this kind of thing, then check out the masterclass, which you'll find at storyart.education. And then if you just want to check out my work, go to storyart.com. Please follow me on Facebook and Instagram and Behance and wherever you can find me. I'm kind of out there everywhere. So
in lots of spots. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, well, that will do it for today. Thanks everyone for joining and watching, whether you're live or you're watching the recording. We'll be back with part 2 in 2 days. And thank you so much for being with us, Karen. It's been awesome.
Thank you, Flynn. Thanks for having me, everyone.
We'll see you next time.